Welcome to All Things in the Name of Love. If you like this show, please like, subscribe, and share. Thanks. Welcome to another episode of All Things in the Name of Love. And if you couldn't figure it out by now, we had technical difficulties, but we're still recording, which is a beautiful thing. Today I have with me John David Latta, who is, among other things, a mystic, author, teacher, former CEO of a big consumer product company. And we were just talking about his book, The Synchronicity of Love, because it related to connecting with the body and how the body really tells us everything we need to know. And I know this from my personal journey, how many things my body has stored that it releases regularly, especially at like 2 o'clock in the morning. But I want to hear about your journey and how you learned this.
Yeah, thanks, Sophia. Let's see. So let's talk about, listening to the body, okay?
Yeah.
Because, we talked a little bit off the air, at least I think it was off the air
Yeah,
about,
it was.
okay, sleep can kind of be all over the map sometimes. And, if you believe, which I do, that a significant portion of the planet, if not the whole planet, is experiencing sort of unexplainable what we call ascension symptoms, where sleep is fractured and all sorts of strange ailments creep up, but they don't last very long. They come and they go, and they come and they go. This never used to happen to me, and I would say about 20 years ago, when I began my spiritual journey, it started to happen maybe 5 years after that.
Okay.
And one of the things I remember, so I'm 65 now, but I've always been kind of lean and in good shape and athletic. And I remember about 10 years ago, like going out to rake the leaves in the fall, and I'd only do it for 10 minutes and go, oh my God, I feel like I need to sleep for a week. What is the matter with me? And one time I remember going in and taking a nap, and I asked the question, fell asleep instantly, and had this really profound dream of Earth giving birth to a full-grown human woman. And as soon as Earth gave birth to the woman ascended at like such speed that her body was like folded over in half. And she arrived at the feet of these tall divine beings that were all dressed in white and had long beards. And I remember loosely hearing about this ascension process. And I felt like the dream was trying to tell me, like, dude, this is what you're going through.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I counsel people all the time, to start with the body, take care of the body, listen to the body. And I don't think there's ever been a more important time to do just that. And I'm living proof. I know a lot of other people like, what the heck is going on with my body? And it's entirely unrelated to illness, disease, physical problems, injuries. It's just something the body's going through, and then it passes, and then a period of time goes, and then it comes again. And then coming back to this fascination with the body talking, I would say it began initially with dreams. And the first spiritual teacher I ever worked with, his name was Brew Joy, and very popular in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I think he passed away about 15 years ago. And he taught that dreams were sacred. And I kind of followed his instruction. And a few weeks after following his instruction, was flooded with dreams.
Cool.
And some of the dreams were about the body. And Sophia, I had gone 6 years with chronic neck pain, like severe chronic neck pain. And I was in my 40s, and I kept thinking, I can't believe I'm going to have to live this way the rest of my life. And I tried every form of yoga, exercise, chiropractic, pain-free neck exercises, a Gosku, anything you could think of. And everything, I tried standing up at my computer at work. I tried sitting on a bouncy ball at work. I tried, I tried everything. And even as a last resort, I had surgery on my neck, and they inserted cortisone in the facet joints in my neck. And the only relief from the pain was when the anesthetic wore off. I remember waking up and going, God, the pain is still there.
Oh, wow.
And so, but then I had one time where I came home from work early, literally in tears, like, I can't believe I'm going to have to live this way the rest of my life. And by you, 6 years earlier, I was rear-ended in a car crash, so I assumed it was just classic whiplash kind of injuries. And so I come home and I lay down, take a nap, and excuse my French, I say, why the fuck does my neck hurt so bad? And I barely got the question out. I instantly fell asleep and this profound dream comes through. And it shows a monk, like a Tibetan monk with shaved head and a red robe. And he's pacing back and forth outside the front of my house. End of dream. And now I was new to dream work and I could not for the life of me understand how that dream had anything to do with my neck pain.
Right.
But I knew it was answering my questions. So I had just joined a dream forum.
Cool.
And the gentleman that ran the forum was really skilled at working with dreams. And I posted everything I just shared with you about the neck pain and tried everything. And I bitched about it. And suddenly this dream came through. And he goes, John, that dream has everything to do with your neck pain. I'm like, I don't get it. Explain it to me. And so he said, and keep in mind, I was really new. And he goes, why do monks shave their head? Why do they wear red robes? Why do you think there's a monk pacing outside your house instead of in your house? And so he said, I want you to open to the idea that you have a very spiritual side. And I'd come from a very competitive, rigid, rational, masculine background. So, and I'd been anti-spiritual and anti-religious my entire adult life. And so I like, dude, I do not have a little monk that lives in me. But I tried to open to this idea and just tried to keep an open mind. And then a few months goes by and then another dream. And this great healer is coming and he's reaching out his hands. He's going to heal my neck. And he puts his hand over my neck. And I'm, oh my God, thank God, somebody's going to finally heal my neck. And an angry old man who lives in my neck looks up at the guy and says, get the fuck away.
Wow.
And I'm like, I think that's trying to. And so again, the guy in the dream form explained to me, and it was a really simple thing. He goes, John, everybody carries resistance somewhere in your body, in their body. It can be their head, their neck, their back, their lower back, their stomach, and you carry yours in your neck. You just have a lot of resistance. And it's true. I was going through a period of time in my life where I probably was trying to resist everything. And so again, it took 2 years of trying not to resist anything and trying to open to the spiritual side. And then came a final culminating dream where that same monk that was pacing outside my house suddenly is in my house. And I've got this thumbtack and I reach over just absentmindly, kind of a giant golden thumbtack, push it into my bulletin board, but it feels weird. And I turn around, I've just plunged this golden thumbtack into the heart of this Buddhist monk who's just smiling at me with such love.
Wow.
And I realized my neck didn't hurt anymore.
Wow.
And so that was the beginning. And it wasn't, and so one thing after another, sometimes I would have little things like I have a body that runs really hot all the time. I'm in Seattle, but I still wear shorts and t-shirts all the time, even in winter. And one summer it was particularly hot, and most of us don't have air conditioning in Seattle.
Right.
And I was just suffering. Yeah, I was just suffering. And this dream came through to put turmeric on all my food, the Indian spice. And I looked it up and said, yeah, nature's natural anti-inflammatory. And so it was little things like that. So I sing the praises to everybody. Pay attention to your dreams, listen to your body. It'll tell you what it needs.
I had this experience this morning when I had this awareness come in. I have been gifted with the ability to navigate anxiety my whole life. And I didn't even know I had anxiety until about 3 years ago because I repressed it so much. Yeah. So usually when I have anxiety, when it wants to manifest itself, it comes in through my heart at around 2:00 in the morning. So I felt it this morning and I'm just present with it and I'm just feeling it. And then I felt, this is so cool. Other parts of my body started waking up because I was being so present with them. I felt my kidneys and my adrenals connect to my heart, which I'd never felt before, which then connect to my front teeth. And I felt the kidney meridian coming into form into my awareness. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. Because I've spent that much time being present with listening to my body that is willing to open up and show me pathways that I've been curious about. And, you know, 3 hours of me just paying attention to it. So that's why I'm a little sleepy. But it was so amazing to know that I've done that much awareness with myself to be able to feel that.
That is absolutely extraordinary. That's
Thank you.
amazing.
Thank you.
You know, one of the other sort of ascension symptoms that would happen to me sometimes, so it sounds somewhat similar, is I get in bed, lay down, and go, why does it feel like I drank 10 cups of coffee before bed? And
Oh,
there's nothing going on in my life. I'm not worried about anything,
mm-hmm,
but it almost feels like my heart's racing a little bit.
mm-hmm,
And so again, had another dream about this whole ascension symptoms, and your body's just going through a change. And so I got in the habit of just heart centering and
mm,
bringing love to the body and just telling it that it's safe.
mm-hmm.
And I still have to remember to do that sometimes, because sometimes I get in bed and go, why am I anxious? There's nothing
Right.
to worry about, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, it's just, it's
yeah,
all that programming that we had. I mean, I I'm actually, for Aquarius, I'm actually really calm and grounded.
yeah,
And so for when I feel that anxiety come in, at least I know what it is now. It's like, oh, my
yeah.
heart's just all of a sudden 2 o'clock in the morning and ding 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 ding. I'm like, okay, okay, I know what this is. It wants my
Yeah,
attention.
yeah.
And
Ah,
so, just being able to have that aware instead of like freaking out about it, because that just exacerbates it. It's like, no, I'm just going to be present with you because you want my attention right now.
yeah, yeah,
And I think that's what anything in the body is like, please pay attention to me. You've been
yeah.
ignoring me. I mean, our culture is such that we're, for I don't even know how long, at least, well, I don't know what history is anymore. So for a long time, we've been conditioned to separate the body from the spirit, but the spirit resides within the temple. And the reason why we incarnated is so we could have this amazing experience of physicality and like enjoy everything and experience everything. And like we forget that. We think, oh, the body is like whatever, like this thing I get to wear and like walk around and do whatever to. But like when you start tuning into the sacredness of the messages and how the body wants to heal itself, that's when things get really interesting.
I totally agree. I tell people all the time that like the body has tremendous capacity to self-heal. You just have to get out of the way,
Yeah.
kind of support it and get out of the way at the same time.
Hmm. Yeah, it's yeah, mine is going, why did you eat so much food in such a little time? Sorry, Belly. But it's always like today I'm walking, I felt so stiff. And my first thought was like, why am I so stiff? And then I was like, there's got to be something going on in our ascension right now because it it was a walk. I mean, it wasn't even a hike. It was like a flat surface walk. So, not giving myself a hard time and being like, well, how come I'm not feeling so good? Or how come, like, why am I not, blah, 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 whatever. It's like, oh, why don't I be nice to myself and realize that there's something greater than the me that I am that can comprehend what's going on is happening.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool. There's there's a gal that I follow online. And there's other people that do this too. And one of the things that is associated with ascension symptoms is solar activity, solar flares.
Mm-hmm.
And Sunday and Monday, there was an extraordinary amount of solar activity, like giant flare after giant flare after giant flare. And I think one of them went on continuously for hours.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, I mean, my wife and I probably both go to bed, 9:30 or 10 at night.
Mm-hmm.
We had
Uh-huh.
company over Sunday, and both of us are like, oh my God, I wish people would just go home. and like, and then last night, my wife literally went to bed at about 7:30 p.m.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, Sunday I was tired and lethargic. I could hardly stay awake. And then last night, just the opposite. Here comes that, like you said, the kind of racing heart and the caffeine,
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how hard you try to go to sleep, it just ain't going to happen
Right.
till, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I've given
So,
up. It's like, okay, so clearly you're not going to let me sleep. So I might as well be, I mean, I'm not saying this in a mean way, but
yeah.
like,
Yeah.
okay, you really want my attention. So I guess I'm just going to surrender to that
Yeah.
and be present because there's nothing else I can do right now. Anything else is
Yeah.
going to be a distraction and that's just going to make it worse.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to be present with you. And if it's going to take 3 hours, it's going to take 3 hours. And I'll just set, like, I'll go
Yeah.
to bed early tonight. So, you know, it's really amazing. And how we can show more grace and compassion with ourselves. One of my biggest things has been frustration.
Mhm.
And it's like not anything, I'm not frustrated with anything right now, but like it's from my childhood and the layers of it. So that's another thing is like you thought you healed something and then there's a deeper layer and then there's yet another layer and it just keeps going
Yeah.
down and down and down the rabbit hole. And like I don't even know what it was last night, but like there was something in me that was ready to be felt that wasn't
Yeah.
ready to be felt before.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife, I think about 5 years ago, suggested I go see her naturopath, which I'd never seen a naturopath before. And checked out pretty healthy, but there was, and the funny thing is, for 30 years, I owned a chemical company.
Oh,
And so, but the funny thing is, she goes, yeah, you're really healthy, but like, how come you got so many chemicals in your system? I'm like, oh,
oh wow.
probably because I was testing competitors' products on my own office carpet in my in my
Oh,
office, and there was like slurry. So she gave me a bunch of, I think it was chlorophyll, some
okay.
green,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it was like a cleanse. And
Mm-hmm.
for like a week straight, I kept telling my wife, like, I feel like crap. I feel like crap. I
Right,
feel
right,
terrible.
right.
And she goes, well, duh, you're on a cleanse. And I'm like, oh, well, I've never actually done a cleanse before. I thought it made you feel good. It makes you feel like crap.
Eventually, yes.
Yeah. And so that's what I sometimes like to say. These ascension symptoms are like, oh God, hooray, time for another cleanse.
Oh
We're going to
yeah.
clean even deeper. In fact, it's really funny. I think Sunday night I had some dream where I was, don't ask me why, I was in South America and some woman came in and said, yeah, I just cleaned your whole house. And just so you know, you got a real deep clean this time.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's intense. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember a couple years ago, I think it was about 4 years ago. Um, I signed up for Purium, which is a great superfood company, and they have a 30-day cleanse.
Mhm.
And so it's got this great green shake, it's got sour cherry, it's got something called now I'm blanking on it. Shoot. Well, anyways, it Biomedic. So Biomedic gets rid of glyphosate or Roundup, that we all have in our bodies.
Yeah.
And then super aminos. And then there was like this final thing of the deep detox. And you did the first set for like 20 days. And then the last 10 days, there was the deep thing. And it was just a little supplement. I had one and I was out for 3 days. I was like, okay, I won't be doing that anymore. And it was just because my body was like not capable of handling it because it was like trying to detox all the other things. And so it's so fascinating that like our bodies want to be as healthy and pure as they can be.
Yeah.
And when we're out of alignment, that detox process can be challenging.
Yeah, well, I discovered that all this time. I thought all these gals I knew, they were always on a cleanse. I thought, oh, well, you feel better. No, you feel terrible. Later, you feel good, but
Yep,
during the cleanse, you feel terrible.
right. But you're just trying to clean your body out, and it's a
Yeah.
beautiful gift to give yourself. I mean, when I realized, I mean, I was living down in Weed, California for 3 years, so I was drinking Mount Shasta water, which is divine.
Yeah.
And so I come up to Oregon and I only had 4 gallons of Shasta water, which I've long since given up. I was long since gone through. So what I do now is I pray over my water. It's just a blessing of like just blessing my water with divine love so that as I drink it, the divine love within me will wake up. Because like we have that ability, and praying over our food, it's not because it's a it's like something we learned. It's like actually blessing the food for feeding us all the nutrients we need. It's bringing that sacredness into, well, because we are sacred temples, like what are we putting in our temples in all forms? That, I don't know, it's something that I've been practicing, not consistently, but I'm trying to practice more and more, because I'm trying to recognize how important it is to honor this temple that we have.
Yeah. 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 I think even the little process you do, I think just the act of slowing down a little bit before you eat is just really beautiful and a blessing.
Hmm. And chewing, lots of
Yeah.
chewing.
Yeah. I admit I tend to like, scarf my food down at light speed. So, but to learn to slow down a little bit.
Well, it's a whole process. Like I mean, I've had these moments where like I want to like do all the things, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna like eat better. I'm gonna like exercise every day. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. And all of a sudden, I place all these expectations on myself.
Yeah.
And especially now that we have all these solar flares and other ascension symptoms, one of my friends said to me a couple months ago, okay, so I want you to know what we're going through right now. If you can actually get out of bed, dress yourself, and maybe just breathe in this time of consciousness, you are doing so well right now. You don't even realize it, because there's so much going on. I was like, thank you for that. It's like a lot of people can't do that. I'm like, wow, thanks
I'm
for
literally writing that down. I'm going to share that with my wife. So that is hysterical.
it is. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, thank you for that awareness, because here I'm like, because I grew up in Connecticut, so like all of the expectations of like, oh well, I have a to-do list every day. My
Yeah.
to-do list is more like guidance. It's not really a to-do list anymore, because getting out of that programming of, well, I have to accomplish X, Y, and Z. Well, who's placing that expectation?
Yeah. I'm totally with you. I'm trying to detox myself from the to-do list, which I've had a major addiction to for
Mm-hmm.
40 or 50 years. I've been
Yeah.
in management literally since the age of 18. So I've been managing
Ooh.
companies, people, organizations my whole life. And yeah, and it's almost like an addiction. I'm kind of learning to let go of it. Like I loved making the list. I love crossing things off. I love staying on top of things.
Right.
And I still think it's awesome, but I'm trying to wean myself from it. It's not been easy. That's been a
Yeah.
slow detox.
Right. I get it,
You know,
because it's just so hard.
if I can I share a couple more
Please do.
body miracle healing
Yeah.
stories?
Yeah.
Um, let's see. The first one was years ago. My wife and I were going to go for a hike on the east side of the mountains, and it
Nice.
was the last day off we had before all the kids went back to school. And if you had kids and the crush of back to school and school
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
supplies, it's just, and suddenly kids are going to school every day and they're coming home with homework and they've got after school activities. So we wanted to take one last outdoor hike before the crush of back to school.
Nice.
But the day before the trip, I torqued my knee somehow
Ooh.
and it was sore and swollen. And I was like, man, I don't think I can drive all the way over there,
Right.
hike all day and then drive all the way back.
Mm-hmm.
Went to bed, hope for a miracle, get up in the morning. No, it's sore and achy. And it's probably 5:36 in the morning. I'm testing my knee and nah, we're not going anywhere. And I'm like, so sad. So I'm sitting in a
Oh.
chair dejectedly at 6 in the morning. It's still mostly dark outside. And all of a sudden, what feels like a bucket of etheric water is poured on top of my head. It
Oh.
flushes through my body, and in an
Mm.
instant, my knee is healed.
Wow.
And I'm not kidding. And I knew it. I stood right up and like did everything I could to make it hurt. It didn't hurt. I said, okay, honey, get out of bed. We're going on that
Wow.
hike after all. So I don't know where that came from. I don't know how it happened. but it reminds me sometimes that, the body is probably not as uh, limited as we think it is. And it is most of the time, but sometimes amazing things happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I have not honestly had something like that ever happen again, but I was just scratching my head going, what the heck was that? Where did that come from? Why did that happen? And then the other one, this is actually one of my favorite stories. So I used to fly about 20 to 25 times a year.
Oh,
And
wow.
when I owned my company, and we were making sales calls in all the biggest retailers in the country. And so I had to fly from Seattle to Jacksonville, Florida with a connection in Dallas and get up the next day, 30-minute appointment in person, and fly all the way home, Jacksonville to Dallas,
Oh.
Dallas to Seattle. Well, again, the day before the trip, I throw my back out. And I did have a long history of quote unquote throwing my back out. And it usually would take weeks to fully recover. And
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to be gentle, do a lot of stretching, maybe walking. And the number one thing that made it hurt worse and not heal would be sitting in an uncomfortable chair, uncomfortable position.
Mm.
And I thought, oh, great. I have to fly all the way to Florida and back. This is going to be
Ooh.
the worst trip ever. And
Yeah.
so I get up in the morning and the same thing, it's even worse than the day before. And it's
Mm.
so sore that when I get to the airport, I have to reach up and grab the roof of my car and kind of do a pull up and hoist my legs
Oh.
up and out.
Oh.
And so I get in line, and there's just 3 or 4 people in front of me, and I'm about to hand the TSA agent my driver's license and boarding pass. And the whole time I'm steeling myself, like, I just got to get through this. I just got
Oh.
to get through this. If I can get through this, I'll come home and then I'll start stretching and,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
but, and all I can think of is this is going to be the worst trip ever. Well, all of a sudden, the chorus to the song, Don't Worry, Be Happy, starts playing in my head.
I love that.
And I was suddenly in this in between zone where, and I did know at that point that music, sound could be healing and
Mm-hmm.
vibration.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, and I actually could feel the vibrations being aimed at my lower back.
Oh,
And so
wow.
I, in that moment, made a decision where I'm going to just hum the song. I'm going to join along and hum and not
Mm.
grumble about how bad the trip's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so the nice thing about airports and airplanes is they're noisy. So nobody notices that you're humming, over and over the same, like a mantra almost.
Mm-hmm.
So I get on the plane and I'm humming. And of course, never fails, I'm sitting next to the window and the person in the seat next to me is impossibly large, like a sumo
Oh,
wrestler.
yeah.
And I'm pinned against the window. And again, the voices in my head are saying, this is going to be terrible. You're in an uncomfortable airline seat. Not only that, you're pinned against the window. You're bent like a pretzel. And no, I just kept humming and humming and humming. And so by the time I deplaned at Dallas, my pain, which started out at maybe a 6, had dropped to a 4, and I couldn't believe it. And
Nice.
so, long story short, I hum all the way. My next flight, I hum in the rental car. I hum over dinner with my sales team. I hum at the hotel. I hum, and in every, so there's 4 flights altogether, 2 going there, 2 going
Yep.
back. Every single flight had somebody in the middle seat, ridiculously large. And the final
Interesting.
one was a woman with a 2-year-old boy in her lap that looked like he was 4 years old, kicking me the whole time. And
Oh,
I just kept humming. And long story short, by the time I got back to Seattle, I thought it was going to go from a 6 to a 9. It went from a 6 to a 1.
wow.
And the cool thing about that is that, the thing where my knee got healed in an instant, I've never been able to duplicate that. And
Mm-hmm.
so, but this one had a practical application. And there have been times like I've been driving a long trip with my wife and I get a little cranky because I'm getting uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I start humming, Don't Worry, Be Happy, and then everything's fine.
I love
And
that.
yeah, and so it's got a practical application. And it just reminds me, I think you had kind of talked about at the beginning, like we have so much conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
And just because something used to happen that way doesn't mean it has to happen that way for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been kind of like the last 10 years of my life is learning to do things in a different way instead of the
Mm-hmm.
way I always used to do them.
I love that.
Yeah.
I had your stories reminded me of an incident that I had. So in tail end of 2020, I start going down to Mount Shasta to visit a friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm driving from Portland to Shasta. It's a 6-hour trip. to spend time with her and to bring back lots of Shasta water because Portland water just isn't Shasta water. And so I do this every 3 weeks. I go back down and I keep getting this tug to stay down there. I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't have a place to live. I just started doing body talk sessions. All I have is my podcast. I don't know why am I being called down. And so and the last time I was supposed to leave, I am in tears because I don't want, like, the contrast between the energy in Shasta and Portland at that time was very dramatic, and my
Hmm.
body was like, no. So I'm like laying in bed in the morning. I'm supposed to start packing my car. And I'm like, okay, I'm calling in the highest light and I'm praying for divine intervention. That is a very, very powerful prayer because when you pray for divine intervention, you're going to get it.
Yeah.
I was I was walking to get my suitcase to put in the car. I had the worst ankle twist I've ever had in my life, and I couldn't walk for 3 weeks. And in 3 weeks, I got a place to live. I found a place for my mom, and I got back to
Wow.
Portland and moved.
I love that. So do you live there now?
No, I'm back up in Oregon.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not in Portland. I'm in a little town south of Salem. So,
Ah, cool.
and missed Oregon. I love Oregon.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
was just really wild. It's like, oh, okay. So careful what you ask for. I mean, not careful, but like, but I was being called that way anyways. And like, I
Yeah.
was feeling this obligation where I had to go back to Portland because my mom was in Portland. Like, boom, boom, boom. I was like, in the space of a week, I had everything fall in line for me. And I was like, wow, okay, I guess I'm supposed to be down there.
Oh, that is so amazing. I love
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I was actually called up to Orcas last May, and I was terrified because I didn't have a place to stay. Like, I was just going blind. I had $200 in my checking account, and I get this call to go, and I had two friends gift me funds. I found a hotel on the ferry. I found a hotel. The second night I'm there, I meet a woman who's looking for a roommate, and apparently you can't find housing on Orcas in the summer, and I did. And so, like, within 2 days, I have a place to stay after not knowing a single person on the island.
You know,
So,
Sophia, that story is exactly the thing that I'm still learning and that I try to teach other people. It's like it would have been so easy to say, no, it's going to be too hard. I won't be able to find a place to live, and I got my
mhm,
mom, and like, no, it can't be done. Actually, it can be done. It doesn't
yeah,
even really have to be that difficult. But trying to get out of, at least for me, what feels like that entrenched ego.
mhm.
Well, it's always been this way, so it's always going to be that way in the future.
I was
um
shaking on the ferry.
yeah.
I was terrified. Like, shaking. I keep hearing the orcas like, "No, you're safe. You're safe. You're safe." And I'm like, "Okay, okay. I don't see you, but I feel you. But oh my God, this is scary because
Yeah.
I've never lived on an island, never jumped off an energetic cliff as high as this one, because like I'm leaving everyone I know. I'm leaving all my furniture behind. I'm just being guided to go, like, from my heart, and know I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
And I've never trusted myself that much. And I was like, okay. But it was
Oh,
magical. It was truly magical.
yeah.
And so I know when we allow ourselves to get out of our way, which can seem insurmountable at sometimes, it's just so much magic happens.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Tom Kenyon, the sound healer?
Okay, so this is interesting. So you're the fourth person I know that has mentioned Tom.
Oh,
I've reached out to Tom. I get to Orcas Island. Tom is off island because his roof was needing repair. So he moved down to Mount Shasta. I
oh, of
think he
course.
moved down to North California while I'm
Yeah.
up on Orcas. I'm like, I'm supposed to meet you. I've had three people at the time tell me I'm supposed to meet Tom Kenyon. And so now I think he's back on the island and I'm supposed to go back up this summer. So
Well, I think that opportunity will present itself because he was on a self-imposed sabbatical from 2019 up until literally just 2 months ago.
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't just the roof. He literally
Okay.
sent an email. I'm on his email list and said he was going through a period of what he called the cloud of unknowing.
Oh,
And he goes,
wow.
so I find myself, I'm a teacher who has nothing to teach right now.
I love that.
And but he has come out of it and he's starting to do some new things. But it's a funny story. He was living on the East Coast, and these beings called the Hathors came to him. They wanted
Mhm.
to work with him because they're masters of sound and vibration. And
Mm.
Tom has a nearly 4 octave voice, which is unusual for a man.
Wow.
And they kept showing him visions of moving to Orcas Island. And he was like, no, I'll maybe move to Santa Fe, but I'm not moving to way up in the middle of nowhere, Pacific Northwest. And a bunch of course, funny synchronistic circumstances happened. And guess where he ended up?
Yep.
And they said to him something about his vibration is in alignment, when you told the story, is in
Mm.
alignment with the Orcas. And when
Mhm.
he got there, his very first day, he got settled in, he looked out from his deck towards the water, sunset. The first thing he sees is a bunch of orcas out there.
Ooh.
And yeah, he's got a book called the Hathor Material. That's an
Mm.
extraordinary book. If you decide to read it, you or your
Yeah.
listeners, make sure you get the revised edition.
Okay.
And yeah, he's a really cool, unusual guy that's had a very cool, unusual life.
Well, the first night I was there, or the first night I was staying with my housemate Kim, she's like, "I want to show you. There's a public beach like a half a mile from our house." So we walked over, and we were gifted with about a dozen porpoises just dancing for us
Uh,
for about a half hour. And I'd never seen porpoises before. And so I mean, not live, I've seen pictures, but like they were like these 4-foot porpoises and they were just dancing back and forth. They were just magical. And then another group of people showed up and they disappeared. So I knew it was for me as a welcome.
mm-hmm.
And I'm actually starting to tear up because of it.
uh,
Um, the orcas, their Salish name is Quelimeshin, which means people of the sea.
hmm.
And I learned that from one of the tribal members. And I haven't met them, but I feel their energy. And they are so freaking magical beings. I mean, all the trees on the island that I don't talk to trees. I feel their energy,
Mm-hmm.
except there is a redwood that talks. She's in Olga and she's a talker. I've never met a tree that talks before, but she's a talker. And I don't know, it feels like it's got a magical vibe to it.
Yeah.
And I've never experienced living in a place that felt that magical before. So it was really, really cool to be there.
That's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
the first Tom Kenyon workshop I went to was in 2005. My wife suggested we go. It was called a Magdalene workshop, and it
Oh,
was
cool.
um, and it was supposed to. Oh, it was about sacred relationship, is what it was called. And I thought,
Mm.
oh, okay. I didn't know who he was. And I'm like, okay. And I was picturing like 5 or 10 couples sitting in a circle talking about their relationship. There's almost 500 people there, and they're from all over the world. I'm like, who the heck is this guy? And
Oh my
so
God.
I worked with him. uh, he would just do 2 or 3 in-person workshops a year, and that was
Mhm.
it. And I probably went to one a year for about 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
And it's funny. He also liked to work with the body and body awareness. And I remember he took us through an exercise once, where he told us to get very, very still and just be aware, if you can, of the brain sending the message to the lungs to breathe. But then he
Mm.
goes, I want you to go deeper. The brain gets a message to command the lungs to breathe. Where does the brain get the message? And I sat there really still, and it's very subtle and really quick. And I like, wow, there's like a ping that goes from your root chakra up your spine to your brain, and then you breathe. And it all happens in a split second.
Mm.
And so I cautiously raised my hand. I said, does it come from the root chakra? And he goes, good awareness.
Mm.
And so, yeah, he liked to work with some real subtle energy awareness kind of things. And so, yeah, I felt like the A+ student. That was fun.
Well, I love that because like that degree of slowing down
Yeah.
is what our bodies really want.
Yeah.
Like, and it's amazing what happens when we do that because I'll just give it a simple example. So I'm at Orcas for 2 months. I go back down to weed because my mom was in one of many stages of transitioning and I thought she was, so I came back down. And I had a need, and it was like I've never had this kind of drive before, to lay on grass for hours at a time every day.
Hmm. Hmm.
And if I didn't, I couldn't sleep well. And it was really, really fascinating because I'd been able, up on Orcas, I was able to watch sunsets for a couple hours a night because like I gifted myself that. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to watch the sun literally set, on the summer solstice, or summer solstice. 10:30 at night, the sun is setting. And I just sat and watched it. And so I slowed myself down enough to watch a sunset for 2 hours. And so when I got down to weed, I'm like, I need to lay on grass for a couple hours a day. And my friends were like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know, but my body needed it.
Yeah. That's really good awareness, and it's I congratulate you on following what your body needed. And there was a period of time. So we live in Redmond, which is just
Oh,
outside
yep.
of Seattle,
Yep.
and but we have 5 acres up on a hill
Nice.
and a little patch of woods in the back. And I want to say for 3 years, I would go to work and I'd come home and I would sit on the ground in the woods for an hour, maybe not 2 hours, but
Mm.
probably an hour, hour and a half every day. And it felt, I'm sure on some level I was grounding something, but I
Oh,
can't say I
yeah.
had any awareness around what was happening. I just knew I needed to do it.
Right. And that's so beautiful that you had that intuitive ability to like tune into your body and be like, oh, I just finished a whole day of working in a chemical plant. I need to detox a little. And that was your body detoxing you.
Yeah. Well, we didn't actually have a chemical plant,
Okay,
but
okay,
we
okay.
made a bunch of chemical cleaners that were sold
Oh, okay.
in big retailers across. So
Okay.
we actually had somebody else do the manufacturing,
Okay.
but I still had, my office was full of what they call shelf sets of lots of different chemical products,
Mhm.
products you've probably heard of, like, laundry pre-washes like Shout and Spray and Wash, and
Okay, okay.
uh, pet cleanup products like Nature's Miracle. So I had all the competitors lined up. So I probably had 100 bottles lined up in nice
Wow.
little on shelves in my office, and it's the way the products were arranged at Petco or PetSmart or
Hmm,
Walmart,
hmm,
and
hmm.
as well as my own products intermixed. And
Right.
so, and then I said I was kind of a bad boy. I was always testing new products right on my office carpet.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah,
Ooh, yeah.
you're right. I was probably detoxing a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I love that you have that access and that ability. And that is
Yeah.
such a pretty, I love Redmond.
Redmond's beautiful. I love Redmond too. It's great.
I used to, for a year and a half, I was off of Lake Sammamish Parkway.
Oh, right on. So we're
Yep.
on what they call English Hill. It's where San Michelle Winery is in Woodinville.
Yes.
So that hill directly east of there, we're right up there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I I also lived in Issaquah for a year and a half. Did not like Issaquah.
Hmm.
The perk
Interesting.
the perk of Issaquah was the park was there, but I only swam in the lake once, and it was really easy access to Snow Lake.
Oh, up by Snoqualmie Pass, right? At
Hmm,
Alpental. Yeah.
hmm. My favorite hike on the planet. That's the first tree that I fell in love with, right at the
uh,
base.
what brought you from Connecticut to the West Coast?
Oh, that's a good question. When I finished my PhD, there were no jobs in the state of Maine except for me picking orders for LL Bean, and that for Christmas. And so
Yeah.
that ended. And my partner at the time was given an opportunity to move out west. And I was like, well, I don't have any opportunities in Maine. And that's where I went to school. So
Hmm.
So yeah, let's go out west. Only to find out that I couldn't get a job except at Frau Meyer's dressing mannequins, um, which was a beautiful experience and humbling me. Um, and then I had to fly back and forth to watch family members die.
Uh,
Um, and then moved back east in 2010 because my mom was suicidal.
hmm.
Saved her. In the process, I had to get on medication because her depression was getting to me. Um, and then my partner moved to Portland and said, do you want to come?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Yes. So moved to Portland in 2011 and stayed there until 2020.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I've met quite a few people that have moved from the East Coast, New York and Connecticut to Seattle. And it's, in my experience, it's always been a year or two of adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's a broad generalization, but it's so competitive in the Northeast.
Oh,
And I remember my ex-wife coming here, and she used to have a lot of money, was married to a Wall Street guy, and they would go to the opera. They had tickets to the opera and stuff like that. So they joined the Seattle Opera when they moved here. And she goes, "There was people at the opera wearing sweats and baseball
uh-huh,
caps." I'm
uh-huh,
like,
uh-huh.
yeah. And probably everybody else wearing, North Face fleece,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and she just, she'd go to the grocery store and be dressed up, and people would say, "You're not from around here, are you?"
Yeah.
And she just felt like everybody in Seattle was passive aggressive, and so anyway, and others.
It's
I remember one gal moved here from Connecticut, decided the schools weren't up to the quality of Connecticut, and packed up their
really,
kids and went back to Connecticut.
wow.
And then she was only there 3 months, and she just said, "Oh my God, I had not noticed how brutally competitive it is."
Yeah.
And she goes, "I watched two lady in Hummers fighting over a parking place and yelling at each other. And they packed up all the kids and moved back to Seattle again. Said, I just don't
Yep.
want to raise my kids in
Yep.
competitive Greenwich, Connecticut."
Oh, oh, oh.
Yeah.
I was north of there. I was in a little town
Yeah.
called Sherman, but it was very, I mean, beautiful, really
Yeah.
beautiful. But for me, I always wanted to know, like, I didn't have the language for it, but like, how's your soul doing?
Yeah.
Like, like, how's your
Yeah.
soul? Like, I care about your soul, not about how much money you make
Yeah.
or what your job is or anything like that. It didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And that's all I was confronted with was like, well, what's your job? What's your career? I had a woman that she was a great voice. I used to do voiceovers, and her voice was, "Darling, darling, what do you do?" And I said, "Excuse me?" I said, I'm working on my master's degree. And she says, "No, no, no, darling, darling, what do you do?" And I said, "You mean for a job while I'm getting my master's degree?" And she said, "Yes, yes, darling, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I work in a mortgage company." She said, "Oh, how nice." And she walked away. And I was like, wow, wow, I do not
Yeah.
understand that because, like, I don't care. I
Yeah.
don't care. Like, how's your soul?
Yeah.
And if I can't have a heart resonance with you, I'm not judging you. I just don't have a heart resonance with you. So I'm not going to have the same frequency of conversation. So we're probably not going to be connected for long
Yeah.
just because the frequencies are different. And that's okay. So I want to
Yeah. It's
oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go.
I forgot what I was going to say. So
Oh,
you go.
okay. So unfortunately, for us, I have a 3 o'clock appointment.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you one final question, and
Sure.
that is, how can people find you?
Yeah, my website is johndavidlatta.com, Latta, johndavidlatta.com. You can find me there. My book is The Synchronicity of Love, Stories That Heal, Transform, and Awaken. And you can find that on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's at Target and Walmart too.
Awesome. Oh, John, I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and I'm sorry that we didn't have the technology working, but I'm grateful that we got to record it.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm grateful to sit here and chat with you this
Yeah,
afternoon.
me too. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.
You too. Thank you so much, Sophia.
You're welcome.